He always imagined my wedding would be the happiest day of my life, but I never expected it would be the moment I finally showed my family who they had underestimated. To understand how I got there, you need to know a little about my story. My name is Ella Tran, and I grew up in Austin, Texas, under the suffocating weight of my father's expectations. Jonathan Tran wasn't just respected, he was royalty in the real estate world. He had built Tran Holdings into a powerhouse, dominating the Southwest, and every family dinner felt like a board meeting. Talk of zoning laws, market flips, and million-dollar deals filled the air. And Michelle, my older sister, was always at the center of it all. She was the golden child, the one my father believed could carry the legacy. Then there was me, the artsy one, as my father liked to put it. When I chose a software development over business school, he practically disowned the idea. "You're too smart to waste time behind a computer screen," Hess said. "Coders work for CEOs, Isabel. They don't become them." But I followed my instincts. While Michelle joined Tran Holdings, I pursued a degree in computer science at Stanford, graduating at 26. My father ignored it. He was too busy flying to New York for Michelle's promotiento coup. I worked at tech startups from San Francisco to Denver, quietly building experience. At family holidays, the passive-aggressive comments were the same. "Still hopping between jobs?" they'd ask. They had no idea I was laying the groundwork for something massive. In a tiny apartment above a coffee shop in Boulder, I began coding what would become Aegis Core, a next-gen cybersecurity framework, using AI to block evolving threats. No one believed in me except my college roommate Ela, who became my first hire after I secured angel funding. When I got engaged at 30, I kept Aegis Core's success a secret, even as the company grew to 60 employees and closed a $90 million Series B round. My parents still treated me like the rebellious child. Then, during the wedding toast, my father made a snide remark. "Well, at least one of my daughters made it." I took the mic. Smiling, I said, "I'd like to thank everyone for being here, especially my investors. Aegis just closed a $90 million deal last week. And yes, I'm the CEO." The silence in the room was delicious. My father's face drained of color. Michelle dropped her glass. That wedding day will never leave my memory. I still remember the early days of Aegis. Ela and I, struggling to put together cheap desks in our first office, while I could barely explain what I was building. "I don't really get what you're doing," Eliance confessed, "but I've never seen you this alive." Those next 2 years were a blur of late-night coding, nerve-wracking pitches, and endless setbacks. Aegis Core slowly grew from a passion project into a rising force in the cybersecurity world. We landed our first client, a mid-sized credit union in Arizona, and things snowballed from there. Then came a healthcare provider, and finally, a quiet inquiry from a federal agency. That was when I knew we were onto something big, but I kept it all under wraps. At family gatherings in Austin, I still wore the mask of the quirky younger daughter, always polite as my father toasted Michelle's latest business deal or magazine feature. Then, I met Alain Navarro, an architectural designer from Santa Fe. He was unlike anyone I had ever known. Wild curls, rough sketches, always peeking from his backpack, and a heart that didn't care about family names or stock prices. The first time we met, he thought Tran Holdings was a law firm. When he finally Googled my family name, I teased. "Surprised?" "I am," he said, looking at me like I was some Ariel. We fell in love over late-night ramen and sketch pads, dreaming of a life where our work made things better, not just richer. Eli proposed a year later with a handcrafted ring and a shaky voice. I said yes without hesitation, but of course my father had thoughts. "An architect?" he muttered over steak one evening. "Couldn't you find someone in business?" "Eli's designing the new Civic Arts Complex," I replied. "His firm just beat out 3 national chains." My father snorted. So, a fancy construction worker. Michelle's husband runs one of the largest hedge funds in the state. That's ambition. I looked at Michelle's husband, his bland smile, eyes glued to his phone, and then at Eli, who had just helped my niece pick out paint colors for a school project. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. Planning the wedding became a battleground. My father insisted on turning it into a corporate spectacle. My mother, ever the peacemaker, gave in. Even Michelle pulled me aside in her perfectly tailored suit. "Just let him have this," she said. "You know how he is, and it's not like you're paying for it." "But I was," I snapped. "Every flower, every seat, every glass of wine paid for with Aegis Corps' profits." They had no idea, and I intended to keep it that way until the reception. If you've ever had to smile through silence while building something no one believes in, you'll understand what happened next. The wedding was always going to be my moment. The day arrived: clear skies, mountain breeze. Everything looked perfect. From the floral arch to the hand-painted name cards on each table, it was exactly what Eli and I envisioned. But at the reception, that was my moment. I sat at the head table, my fingers gently laced with Eli's under the white linen. My father stood, lifting his champagne flute. He looked polished, commanding, but there was something cold in his eyes. This wasn't just a toast, it was an ambush. When Isabel was born, he began, his voice echoing across the ballroom. I had such dreams for her. The Tran family has always stood for excellence, for legacy. He glanced at Michelle, who gave a small, proud smile. My father started our company with nothing. I turned it into a regional empire. And Michelle, of course, is continuing that legacy with brilliance and grace. He paused, took a slow sip, and then turned to me. But Isabel chose to code a career for people who work for visionaries, not become them. A few chuckles, a few raised eyebrows. I saw Eli shift beside me, fury rising. I gently tightened my grip on his hand. "Not yet. The truth is," my father continued, "some people just aren't made for legacy. Isabel will never amount to anything meaningful. She's been and will always be the disappointment of the Tran family." A hush fell over the room. Even the wait staff stopped moving. My mother stared down at her lap, twisting her napkin. Michelle folded her arms. Eli looked ready to throw a chair. I stood slowly, brushing my gown down. My heart didn't race. It pulsed, steady with purpose. "Thank you, Dad," I said, lifting my glass with a calmness I didn't feel. Such heartfelt words. I looked at Michael, my CTO, seated discreetly near the AV booth in a photographer's vest. He gave a subtle nod and pressed a key on his laptop. The massive LED displays around the room flickered to life. My father turned, confused. "What the hell is this?" Financial dashboards, stock tickers, news headlines. And at the center, Aegis Core Technologies IPO details, national contracts, government partnerships, and one very large number, $90,200,000. Ownership, Isabel Tran, 38%. Gasps filled the room. I stepped around the table, my voice steady. "While you were grooming Michelle to carry your legacy, I was building my own." I paused. "Maybe you've heard of it? The adaptive AI-based cybersecurity system now used by 6 of the 10 largest financial institutions in the country." My father's face turned gray. Michelle's mouth parted, stunned. Her husband was frantically typing on his phone. "But that's not all," I continued. Another nod to Michael. The screens changed, now showing Tran Holdings board meeting logs, stock purchase records, and insider documents. 3 months ago, we identified dangerous vulnerabilities in Tran Holdings infrastructure. The kind my software protects companies from. "I could have warned you," I said, stepping closer. His eyes widened. "But instead," I continued, "I watched." Images of minor breaches flashed across the screens. The ownership chart updated. Isabel Tran, 22% stake in Tran Holdings. As of this morning, I said softly. I own 22% of your empire. Tomorrow, even more. I smiled. Because tonight, several board members are announcing early retirement, and they've all agreed to sell to me. Michelle's husband leapt to his feet so fast, he knocked over his champagne flute. You can't do this. Dad, she can't do this. Actually, I said calmly, I already did. I turned to the stunned crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm thrilled to announce that beginning tomorrow, Aegis Core Technologies will initiate a strategic merger with Tran Holdings. We'll be implementing a full-scale modernization of their cybersecurity infrastructure, streamlining outdated systems, and bringing the company into that one honest century. Gasps, some applause, mostly disbelief. My father finally found his voice. You planned this. All of it, the timing, the reveal, the shares. I smiled. I learned from the best, Dad. Isn't this what you always preached? Find the cracks. Control the narrative. Strike when no one sees you coming. Reporters who had come to cover what was meant to be the society wedding of the season were no scrambling, whispering into microphones. Liv posting headlines like bride announces $3 B merger at her wedding. And she's the CEO. My father's face was the color of a sunburn. Michelle looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. I walked back to Eli, who stood proudly, hands tucked in his jacket pockets, eyes full of admiration. You ready to face the cameras, Mr. Tran Navarro? The first teased. He grinned. Lead the way, Miss S. Tran Navarro, CEO of Aegis Core Technologies. The aftermath unfolded exactly as I expected and a little more. The fallout from the wedding revelation was swift and all-encompassing. What was supposed to be a family celebration turned into a media frenzy, with reporters scrambling for headlines. I couldn't help but smile as I watched my father, his face burning crimson, try to gather the pieces of his pride. It was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment I reclaimed control over the narrative. Aegis Core's $3 billion merger with Tran Holdings dominated the news for weeks. Analysts hailed the deal as a perfect example of stealth leadership and visionary execution. No one saw it coming, not my father, not Michelle, and certainly not anyone at Tran Holdings. Investors finally recognized the potential of Aegis Core, and the stock price of Tran Holdings surged as they realized the extent of the transformation we were about to bring. Michelle, the family's golden child, was quietly moved into an advisory position, a move that seemed more like a consolation prize than a promotion. My father remained in the board, but for the first time in his life, he wasn't in the driver's seat. He was a passenger. The real power had shifted into me hands. The first time we met at the boardroom table, I slid a folder across to him. Here's the infrastructure upgrade package, I said calmly. I'll need your signature before the close of business. He stared at the folder for a long moment, his eyes searching mine. Then, with a sigh, he picked up the pen and signed. You really did it, he said almost in awe. You built something incredible. I nodded, holding his gaze. Yes, I did. Without your name, your approval, or your rules. I didn't respond, but the silence between us said everything. That was the part that still stung for him. The part he couldn't quite let go of, the fact that I had done it all on my own, without relying on the family legacy he so fiercely guarded. I saw the recognition in his eyes, the acknowledgement that I had succeeded where he never expected me to. As he left the room, he paused at the door, looking back at me. Your mother wants you over for dinner this Sunday, he said. I smiled, a little smug. I'll be there. And this time, Dad, I'll giveth toast. The months following the wedding and merger were a whirlwind. Aegis Core expanded rapidly, and within a year, we were valued at over $3 billion. My father remained on the board, but the power dynamics had shifted. Michelle, once the shining star, found herself in a new role, one that felt like more of a demotion than an elevation. It was hard to feel sorry for her, though. After all, she had been complicit in dismissing me all these years. Meanwhile, the first flourished. The company's success became a testament to everything I had worked for, everything I had built in silence, in the shadows. Aegis Core's technology was now used by 6 of the top 10 financial institutions in the country. My team had proven that we could not only protect companies from evolving cyber threats, but also help them navigate the digital landscape with confidence. Eli and I settled into a comfortable rhythm, both in life and in business. We moved into a modern penthouse, overlooking Boulder's Flatirons, though I kept my tiny apartment above the coffee shop, the place where it all started. Some nights, when the weight of everything started to feel too heavy, I would return to that old desk, fingers hovering over the same keyboard, remembering the quiet hours I spent coding in isolation. Back then, no one believed in me. They thought I was wasting my time, but I wasn't wasting anything. I was building something that would change everything. One evening, I received a call from my father. "I need your opinion on a blockchain acquisition," he said, sounding almost tentative. "You see things differently than I do. You see where the world is going." I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the city skyline, the lights sparkling like tiny promises of what was to come. "No, Dad," I replied quietly. "I don't just see the future. I build it." And that, I realized, was the difference between us. My father had always been about maintaining legacy, holding on to the past, while I was building something new, something better. I had rewritten the legacy, the one they thought was theirs to define, and in doing so, I had reclaimed me worth. I had proven that success doesn't come from following someone else's blueprint. It comes from having the courage to make your own. A year after the merger, I found myself sitting at the board table, looking across at my father. His position had shifted from the patriarch, leading the charge, to a man watching the world he had built change in front of him. I could see the pride in his eyes, but there was something else there, too, something he couldn't hide. He was finally respecting the empire I had built from nothing. Michelle had found a new rhythm as well. She was running a local nonprofit now, something I never thought I'd see from her. Maybe this was her way of finding fulfillment, stepping away from the pressure of living up to our father's legacy. But in a way, she had finally found her place, one that didn't involve competing with me. And I could respect that. As for me, I had rewritten the legacy, and now I was living it. The success wasn't just about the company, the money, or the IPO. It was about proving that I could do it my way, without their approval, without their expectations hanging over me. I had built something worth inheriting, something that would last. At our first board meeting together, I slid a folder across the glass table to my father. "Here's the infrastructure upgrade package," I said. "I'll need your signature before the close of business." He picked up the pen slowly, his fingers lingering over it. Then, with a deep breath, he signed. "You really did it," he said, finally acknowledging my success. "Yes," I said quietly. "I did it without you, without your rules." I don't think he'll ever fully understand the sting of that moment, knowing that I built it all on my own, without needing to follow in his footsteps. After the meeting, he paused by the door. "Your mother wants you over for dinner this Sunday." I smiled, feeling a sense of pride that had nothing to do with approval. "I'll be there, and this time, Dad, I'll give the toast." Life moved forward with purpose. Aegis Core continued to grow, becoming an industry leader in cybersecurity. Tran Holdings, though still strong, was no longer the dominant force it once was. My father, now relegated to the board, had lost his place at the helm. But for the first time in his life, I think he realized that he didn't need to be in charge to have value. I had done it. I had built something greater than he could ever have imagined. And in the process, I had rewritten the legacy, not just for myself, but for the entire family. The media, of course, loved to frame the story as a revenge tale, the overlooked daughter taking over her father's empire. But oh me, it was never about revenge. It was about reclaiming my power on my own terms, about showing the world that success doesn't need anyone else's blueprint. And that is the part that will always matter the most. Success, true success, comes from within. It comes from believing in yourself, even when no one else does. I didn't need my father's approval. I didn't need Michelle's validation. I had built something worth inheriting, a legacy all my own.